If your fantasy team is off to a rough start this season, you should be actively engaged in the trade market, trying to buy low on some struggling stars. If your team is off to a good start this season, you should still be active in the trade market. It's always a good time to try to take advantage of some great values. These are some players I'm trying to get on my team while their value is lower than it should be. Let's start with an ace that hasn't looked like an ace so far early this season, Kevin Gausman in Toronto. Now, he just faced the Yankees and actually looked pretty good, went 5 innings, only gave up 1 run, but that managed to lower his ERA to 8.16. And his whip on the season is down to 1.74. That tells you exactly how bad he was in his first couple of starts. And also worth noting that 5 innings that he finished is the longest of his starts so far. He's also 0-2, hasn't managed a win or a quality start. People who drafted Gausman early as an ace for their fantasy team are underwhelmed, to say the least. And let's face it, the Blue Jays in general have just been disappointing. But what's going on here seems pretty obvious. I don't think it's father time catching up with Gausman. I don't think that he's lost anything on his fastball, whatever. This is a matter of him shaking the rust off. Remember, he didn't really have a full spring, was limited because of shoulder fatigue, and wasn't ready for opening day. Managed to avoid the IL, but for intentional reasons, they're limiting his workload early. Don't want to risk another injury to a star pitcher. They're ramping him up slowly. He's going to work into the things as time allows. It's going to take some time for him to really get into that midseason form, and I think it will happen. This isn't an elbow issue. It doesn't seem like to be a sign of something else, or he would have been on the injured list. So we're going to see vintage Gausman before long. This is the time to take advantage of the fact that his ratios have been hurting teams so far. He's not been what anybody expected. And there are some good indicators, despite the fact he hasn't looked good at all yet this season. He's still not walking guys. That's something he just doesn't do and still hasn't done it. It's nothing to do with command or control, so that's okay. He's still 84th percentile in terms of walk rate, and he is generating whiffs at a clip of the 85th percentile. And so if the command is still there, if the injury isn't something to worry about, again, just by May, we should see what we're hoping for is ace-level pitcher. Now I want to talk about the ace of the Washington Nationals staff. If it took you a second or you're still thinking, who's that? That's the problem. He may not be labeled as their number 1 guy in that staff, but Mackenzie Gore is clearly the best pitcher they have. Gore is also a pitcher who was at one time the number 1 pitching prospect in all of baseball. I talked about Gore a lot last year, was all in on him, and still in on him this year, even though he didn't really break out in 2023. But this year, so far, so good. In his first 16 innings, he's already got 23 strikeouts, a 2.81 ERA, and a 1.19 whip. Despite all that, he's barely half rostered across Yahoo Leagues, 55% owned, and that's even lower in ESPN. So I'm almost tempted to put him on a waiver wire video, but I know that you guys are in competitive leagues, and most likely he's already owned. But this is the time to go out and get a guy like this, who is not only going to be the ace of this team going forward, but could be near the front line of your fantasy staff. I'm not saying he's going to be a Cy Young candidate or he's going to be, a guy who should be your top fantasy pitcher, but surely he's being undervalued right now. He's got the strikeout stuff. He's keeping his ratios low. The command has definitely improved, and that's what we were waiting to see. So I don't think there's anything else to wait for with Gore. He's being viewed as kind of a back-end guy, kind of a risky pitcher, and sure, there's always risk with a young pitcher like this, but he's shown exactly what I was hoping and waiting for. He's generating a 90 percentile whiff rate. You might look at his last outing, where he did strike out 11 batters and say, well, yeah, but it was the Oakland A's. Okay, that is fine. Show me a pitcher with great stats so far early this April that hasn't faced at least 1 or 2 subpar offenses. Yeah, Gore's going to have to face teams like the Braves and the Phillies in his division. But, the schedule isn't exactly the way it used to be. It's a lot more diverse. You don't play the teams in your division as often. But besides that, Gore has shown that he can be a frontline pitcher. This is the time to go out and get him on the cheap. Same goes for another lefty with great strikeout stuff, and that's Nick Lodolo in Cincinnati. Now, Lodolo's just coming off an outing where he struck out 10 batters, but it was the White Sox. And I'll say, doesn't matter because this is a guy who knows how to strike batters out. We've seen it. Now his career, again, very short to this point career so far because of injuries, and he's still a very young pitcher, but a career strikeout rate just under 30%. Really, the issue with Lodolo has been injuries. Last year, of course, missed a big chunk of time. Then going into this season, wasn't ready. And what I was concerned was the fact that this was a left leg injury. Of course, being lefty, got to push off of that. Definitely some risk here, and this is why he wasn't ready to start the season, just made his season debut. Now, I'd be lying if there wasn't also another issue besides health, and that's the fact that last year the long ball was definitely problematic for him, giving up 10 home runs in just 7 starts, and pitching in Cincinnati half the time, going to be conducive to some balls leaving the yard. Lodolo is one of those pitchers I feel like is going to have a lot more pronounced ups and downs and spikes. He's going to have some flat-out dominant starts like the one he just had in this season's debut. And then sometimes he will give up multiple home runs, get hit hard. So there's not going to be a lot of in-between with him. So as long as you're ready for the lows and enjoy the highs, know that you will get a guy who has ace-like potential. It might take some more time before he really puts it together, but you know you're going to get help with strikeouts. And I think over the course of the season, it'll all balance out, and he'll probably give you an ERA in the mid-3s, maybe high 3s, which these days is not too bad. If you love watching baseball and playing fantasy baseball, you probably love playing MLB The Show on PlayStation, Xbox, or Switch. Well, the best place to get those stubs without paying full price is MMOAH.com. On top of their already discounted price, you get an extra 5% off by using code ENDGAME. You can build your perfect Diamond Dynasty even faster by clicking the link in the description below and using our promo code. And we're getting to the point where some fantasy owners are getting impatient with their hitters who are not hitting. I think the first here on the list is a guy that you want to try to get now before that buy low window closes, and it's Yandy Diaz for Tampa Bay. Now, if you know Yandy Diaz, the one thing that you expect besides just that reliability and that he'll be out there every single day is batting average. Well, so far hitting .211, and that's coming off a 2-hit game on Wednesday. And he's not really a power hitter, but that power has improved the last couple of years. You expect at first base, he's going to get you a decent amount. Only 1 home run this year. Out of all qualified first base eligible hitters, right now his offensive rating ranks 23rd according to Fangraphs. So Diaz is definitely disappointed to this point, but there should be almost no reason to worry here because this is simply a slow start. I mean, he's still leading off every day. The plate discipline is still excellent. The power will come around. The hitting will come around. It's just a matter of timing, right? Some guys just have their slumps in the beginning of the season. So Diaz might not be one of those players that single-handedly carries your team in any category, even average, but just so solid. And again, I will say this, you don't always have to go out and look for this tremendous upside, this breakout player, this young, it can just be a boring veteran who consistently gives you counting stats. So if you're disappointed with your first baseman for whatever reason, or you just want a more solid option at corner infield, go and see what you can get Diaz for. And on the same note, this is a great time to try to get Masataka Yoshida for the Red Sox. Not young, not too exciting, not going to give you really elite production in a single category, but he could be a solid number 3 outfielder for you. It's just going to take a little longer than we thought. Yoshida hitting .215, just 1 home run, very similar to Yandy's numbers. He just got the day off, and maybe that'll trigger something, maybe not. I'm not concerned here because plate discipline, just as good, actually a little better than last year. Extremely low strikeout rate of only 14%, and his walk rate has improved a little bit. There's really nothing going on here except a slow start. The bat just hasn't quite come around yet. I'm still on Yoshida long term, and you got to be encouraged by the fact that he's hitting 5th in that lineup right behind red-hot Tyler O'Neill and Tristan Casas, who you know I love, but also he is starting to heat up too. Yoshida should have plenty of RBI opportunities. In fact, he just hasn't taken advantage of it yet. But I also like these kind of trade values to buy low. You don't always have to go in on a star player and try to get him for a bargain. Sometimes you can offer very little. Maybe a guy you just picked off of waivers this year, like a Bryce Terang or something like that. Somebody who's got a little bit more hype and excitement. Somebody who's not really going to be missing from your team. Maybe even a bench player to get someone who was, middle to late round draft pick like Yoshida was. And sure, this isn't going to be an instant game changer for your team, but over the course of the long haul, and again, it is a long season, this will improve your team. So just a reminder that when you're trading, it's not always about that one major move. Sometimes all those series of little moves you make to help your team here and there, they add up. But if you're looking to make a major splash and you want to try to go in on a star who is ice cold to start the season, or this is probably the only time you might be able to get somewhat of a discount on J-Rod. Julio Rodriguez was typically drafted in the top 3, the very least top 5 in most drafts. Anybody who got him after the 5th pick, you're probably thinking you got a steal. And now you're maybe regretting that. And if you're thinking, I mean, come on, who's worried about Julio Rodriguez? I've not only asked people about whether they should trade him, I've had some people ask whether they should drop him. The answer is clearly no to both, but also if you don't have Julio Rodriguez and you think there's any chance that the current Rodriguez owner would be willing to part with him for anything less than a major haul, you might as well start negotiating right now. Reminder of why he was such an early draft pick. You know, his rookie season, 28 home runs, 25 steals. Last year, 32 and 37. So it just seems logical. He's due for a 40-40 season. Well, he's not off to a great start because he has 0 home runs, although he does have at least 4 steals, and 2 of those just came in the early part of this week. It's only batting .206, so again, hard to steal too much when you're not getting on base. But we've seen some signs, a couple hits here and there. No home runs, but he's getting on base, and of course he will run when he's on base. Again, this is a case where this entire offense has just been really bad to start, but seeing some signs from some other Mariners too, which is good because you know sometimes as a team, guys just get hot or cold at once. Julio Rodriguez will definitely be fine. Look, he's just chasing too much. That's the bottom line. He's got 34% strikeout rate, which you know is bad. 35% chase rate. He's pressing. He's trying to do too much. He'll figure it out. It's just way too early to give up on a guy like this. But if somebody is willing to do it, just go ahead and take advantage of them. And then I don't know if you could really buy low on an elite closer ever, but I'd be remiss if I didn't at least mention Yohan Duran of the Twins, starting to work his way back in rehab from his injury. Hasn't pitched at all yet this season, was still drafted everywhere pretty much, but has been sitting on the IL. Look, I get it if you drafted him, or I should say if somebody else drafted him and has had him on IL, they're probably not going to just trade him away now. But you never know. People get impatient. People get nervous because a guy coming off an injury. If you can trade somebody who is now currently saving games and can get you comparable value, or at least they feel it's comparable value, I would do it. Ryan Helsley, Mason Miller, Robert Suarez have been lights out to start the season and racking up saves. I would rather have Duran than any of those. So if I can get a 1-for-1 trade there, I'll do it. Those are the players I am trying to buy low right now in fantasy before it's too late. These are the players I'm trying to stash. These are the exciting rookies that you might want to get before it's too late.